Today I tried the daily workout suggestions for running on my Garmin Fenix 7S Pro. Previously I already tinkered a little bit with it, but eventually I decided to not have it enabled, so you can have a switch on and off, where every time you click on the running, it then either shows you what you are supposed to do, or it doesn't show you what you are supposed to do. What you are supposed to do, and you then just click through and start the run. Now, the problem with the prompt appearing again and again was with these shorter runs where I didn't want to do a specific workout. So if I just run to the gym, 800 meters, 900 meters, I don't need this additional step of having this in there. So I tried as a solution to this already to copy the activity and to enable the daily workout suggestions only with one activity, so I created a secondary run, but this didn't work. So the synchronization of the enabling or disabling of this feature seems to be kind of default enabled, so one is not able to have a second running activity on the watch and thereby bypass this otherwise constraint. Now, I turned this therefore on again, and what also seems to be the case that you have to turn off the watch and restart the watch in order for this to then generate something. It at least seemed in my experience now as of today to be the case that if I just have the watch on and I then enable this feature, then it doesn't show basically runs. It seems to have to restart it. It seems to be I don't know if this is a sentence. So I tried this today, and there are two different options. The first option is based on heart rate, and the second one is based on pace. So but today it told me I should do a base run, 48 minutes at a pace of 5:25 or something like this, which was fairly on the above average side for me. Now currently Garmin, at least as of this morning, gave me a VO2 max estimate of 57, or at least up until this morning I had it, so it was 57.5, but Garmin rounds it up, and after this run I today only now have 57 again. Now, it was quite hard, so Garmin shows you basically something similar to this. So on the one side, so there's an optimal zone with the pace, and then you also have two red zones. So I started out, but since this was my second workout in this duration of being awake, I was not as capable maybe as I would have been if I would have waited until basically the next daily sleep, but this was not really possible due to scheduling constraints. So I therefore ran in this morning already, and so I was not able to hit it, and also gave me an execution score, which in this case was low with 26. The question now I ask myself is, first of all, what does this tell me? So what things could I change to maybe enable something like this, which obviously to a certain extent it seems obvious that a program like this, which takes into account my heart rate, my sleep data, at least if this is somewhat accurate, with the sleep data one could maybe doubt this. The Garmin watch seems to have a problem whenever I have my watch on and then I sleep on my stomach. I often have my wrists kind of constrained down here because I'm sleeping on them, and so there seems to be a problem with then getting proper heart rate readings, and so I don't really know how to resolve this apart from sleeping then like this, but then it gets my face, like it distorts my face. It seems to also alter slightly my features, with then one side of my face kind of appearing slightly asymmetrical in the morning at least. And so now I have been questioning to which extent it makes sense to give control over something like my training plan to something like Garmin. And so for this to somewhat reasonably work, I also got a blood pressure monitor. I also got a scale. So the scale I think is mostly necessary to have daily updated weight in Garmin, and also body composition in Garmin, which then maybe at least in the future would allow further maybe recommendations based on this. So one recommendation that already takes body composition into account is the Garmin Fitness Age, which previously already told me that I have a high BMI, but the BMI without the body fat doesn't tell that much at least. And so I always had almost too high BMI with 24.7 or something like this. So 25 is the threshold for being overweight. And so I basically was on the threshold of being overweight, which I might also be, because overweight is just overweight and not overfat. But the question is, of course, what does this then additionally tell me, or what additional information would maybe slightly then change this perspective on being overweight? So definitely I seem to still need to reduce my body fat, but the question is, so reducing body fat and increasing muscle mass is kind of the resolution to this question, but the question is to which extent and how to prioritize what, and so on and so forth. Now the question is also, now back to again a broader topic, the question is to which extent or how many workouts of the week could I basically assign to Garmin in terms of figuring out what I actually should do. So if you actually take a look at the daily suggestions, then it usually is some kind of pattern of two different things. So first of all, you can activate 2 long runs, or you can actually activate more long runs, but by default 2 long run days are activated. So these would be days where you have a little bit more time for them to do maybe a longer run. So I activated then only Sunday, because Sunday is currently the only day I actually properly have scheduled running, even though sometimes I run to the gym, sometimes I do an additional interval training, because it seems to be the case that if I don't have every now and then an interval training, in which I also do kind of drill work, so basically lifting my legs up and also doing these different kinds of things, running to the side, which seems to somewhat benefit basically my agility when running. I don't know if there's a better word for this, but if I don't have this, then it seems to be the case that my running form over time seems to deteriorate. So therefore, the overarching question that now results out of this is, does it make sense to basically outsource to a certain extent the scheduling, and not the scheduling would still be done by me, I think, but to which extent could I assign basically a certain time to Garmin and also a certain function, such as, okay, I want to increase my VO2 max, but the functions you cannot really change that much. So VO2 maxing or VO2 maxing seems to be something that's useful anyway. Reducing body fat seems to be useful within the certain within basically the range. Maybe it's kind of like a U-shaped function, that the maximum utility is kind of in between, well, the optimal range in terms of body fat. But what is the optimal range in terms of body fat? I seem to do better on the lower range of body fat that I at least have experienced for my body. And so this seems to be anywhere from, I don't know, it depends on also the measurement device. So if I take my home scale, bioimpedance, only on the bottom, basically only measuring the current that goes through my feet, I assume, then the optimal range seems to be in between 10 to 15%, I would say. But if I then take the in-body measurement at my gym into account, then at the same day I do have a measurement difference in terms of how much body fat percent are estimated of maybe 3 to 4 to 8%, which is quite high, I would say, in terms of the difference. Now, let's just say it's 5% on average, which would mean then that I would target basically maybe 5% at the in-body measurement at the gym, which seems to be somewhat reasonable, given that I currently still have a little bit too high body fat, at least for proper running. So in terms of running, I think it seems to make most sense to try to increase the power to weight ratio, which I could further do if I would be able to decrease my body fat. And also one could think of the body kind of like a fail-safe system, if one at least kind of like a, okay, you're not that intelligent, you, system 2, are not that intelligent anyway, so we don't give you admin rights anyway, so you can only do the things you think you want to do. You can also think you think, but whenever we run against a very important threshold, well, then we just you don't have admin rights anyway, so we just override, we as system 1 just override, and then we make you sleepy, we make you tired, we make you agitated, and so you cannot really, so basically what you can do is then very limited. So what I have been thinking is that if there was basically, I cannot get to minus 20% body fat or something like this, because my body prevents me from doing this anyway. The same would be true maybe for accumulating a Garmin load of 2000 in a given day, for example. It probably will be very unlikely to happen, because I encounter so many borders which I would have to cross that it would become very hard. Now, the question is, first of all, what workout types can Garmin schedule in this way, and also dictate then what I can do. And the second question that results out of this is how many of these workouts should I do in a given week, and how many should I still plan myself. So in terms of running, it seems to be somewhat useful to say, okay, on Sunday, if now I want to start right now, and given the training readiness, given my resting heart rate, given my VO2 max estimate, what should I try to run at? Now, the watch did tell me that I'm too slow all day long, not all day long, but all run long, as I ran today. But, well, at least then I know that Garmin thinks that I should do more, that basically my mental intensity that I am able to bring up and therefore kind of match how fast I'm running is just not very good, or I should have basically take more responsibility and try to drive my system 1 higher, and therefore basically the lack is in me, one could say. And this also to a certain extent answers the question and also alleviates me from some responsibility, of course only if the data then is accurate, and if not, Garmin did miss my entire night of sleep. Now this also I think has to be not measured but mentioned, that this data is still quite inaccurate. So the training readiness of 75 or something like this I got later this day is somewhat useful, but only if it also subjectively aligns with my subjective feeling of training readiness. Because if it doesn't, then Garmin might basically drive me. So if it doesn't, then this just means I think that the data is not too accurate. So I would still say, okay, the subjective feeling is kind of more. But then the question is how much of your subjective feeling can be influenced by your mental intensity, and this then again is influenced by how much dopamine you have running in the system, and how many dopamine sources might deplete your dopamine system in the long run. But this is just now one thing that I wanted to mention here. So what would maybe a week like this look like? I don't know if the Garmin workout coach also exists for swimming, but I can look this up right now. No, it seems to not exist. So if you click on the options in a workout on swimming, this is what it looks like, at least if it is in focus. And also if I clean my watch face again, then you don't see the training options, and you do see them in the normal running workout. So it seems to be not the case that Garmin kind of is able at this point in time to kind of overtake your training, kind of the overarching approach to training, such as what do you do in a given week. So currently I do have kind of 2 different types of training, or maybe 3. The first one is the resistance training, so basically cardiovascular system, not cardiovascular, but muscular system, or skeletal muscle mass, or targeting skeletal muscle and trying to maybe grow it, so hypertrophy to a certain extent, but I also want to increase my power output. Then the second part would be hitting the cardiovascular system, and the third part, maybe to a certain extent, would be the cardio, or just the respiratory system, but of course you're always kind of taking both in this case. So, well, I do kind of 3 different types of workout: resistance training, then just cardio, and a mix of kind of both, maybe also kind of resistance training, endurance, muscular endurance on the side. So maybe 3 different kinds. Now the question is, maybe in the future at least, Garmin can also do the swimming and basically say, so on the running, for example, it would say, okay, interval training right now, and do a 10-minute warm-up, and then do this pace, and so on and so forth. Maybe in swimming it could also do this in the future at least. And then with biking it probably already is able to do this, but I don't have access to any smart trainer. So currently I do the assault bike session in the gym. I try to again hit 500 calories. Previously I tried to target 40 minutes, but that often seemed to result in a too low intensity, as the time constraint maybe in terms of incentive structure is not that ideal. So it makes more sense, I think, to try to minimize time while having a fixed output, in this case the 500 kilocalories, which are also not on the Garmin watch but on the device itself, which means they're independent from basically my own performance and also my daily performance condition. What I also saw as of today again, and I already saw this before, is that Garmin has something like performance condition, which is not really a metric that is tracked somewhere. Maybe it's kind of the training readiness otherwise, but it's, I think, not in Garmin Connect or the metrics, and you can also not see it on your watch. So the training condition, as I began to run today, was reduced by 2. So I don't know what this means, but it also, well, it just means that probably Garmin kind of mispredicted to a certain extent what my condition actually looked like, and so at a given heart rate I was not able to run that fast or something like this. So maybe it would make sense in the future maybe that, so there are already apps that can plan your resistance training. And this would be, I think, something that is quite useful. Of course, if it is done right. If it is not done right, and the same might be true for Garmin planning your cardiovascular training, but then missing 2 nights of sleep, and then it basically cannot tell you much of anything. But if it is done right, then it would allow to basically outsource this responsibility optimization basically to Garmin, and then Garmin could do it better. On Apple Health, you already have, I think, the option, at least in some countries, to import also your blood data. So if you, for example, have high HDL or something like this, then it might be useful, or high HDL, not HDL, so there are LDL and HDL, and one of both seems to be improved with HIIT training, at least that's what I read once on Inside Tracker, I think. Could also be not true. But it would make sense to have kind of a system that accumulates more and more data. Of course, there are also privacy concerns. And then to say, what if I could in the future say, okay, I have time for swimming once a week. That's maybe at max 1 hour of swimming. I have time for running once a week. I do 3 times of resistance training a week. I want to plan one workout myself, and then I have one interval workout which I either do myself, or you can also do it, I don't know. But what now if Garmin, in combination with other fitness equipment, could then manage these workouts? So in terms of managing these workouts partially by my gym, for example, there are already stations at my gym. So these are machines that are smart, so they are connected to the internet, and they can not only count reps, but they also, based on a 1 rep max test, it also prompts you basically on a somewhat reasonable basis, or there seems to be also an algorithm behind how often it prompts you. So every couple of weeks maybe it prompts you to do a 1 rep max test, and then the training weight is basically aligned with this. But in addition, it also changes different modes. So there's an isokinetic mode, there's another mode. Currently my gym only has 6 of these machines, but there are already way more machines of at least this company available. So the idea is that basically from the second to second workout, I would also give the responsibility to something that is a machine, and then basically opt into the optimizations that also come with something like this, at least if the system is more capable than I would be. So if I have a particular bad day, for example, it also might notice this and also already have access to my resting heart rate or something like this. And then I could say, okay, on Sunday I run. And then I could also say, okay, just give me the information I need now to influence my system 1 in a way that then results in a somewhat optimal thing. And so Garmin as of today had this glance, or whatever it is called, which then was optimal in the middle, and then red on the one side and red on the other side. So what if I had something like this then also for my resistance training? So currently, because it is so complex, I think, or maybe just more on the side of complicated, because it is a problem that could be solved probably. So it seems to be so complicated to do a split training, for example, and so I just do the same thing again and again, because then my system 1 can take over, and then I go to the gym, and then ideally I just go through the workout, and I can even think additionally about things that are going on in my day, and then I just have the workout finished. And because, well, system 1 has taken over as an autopilot as some kind of thing, and therefore, so the reliance on system 1 is basically the reliance on, I cannot do that many things in terms of planning and executing in terms of system 2, because I'm so constrained in terms of how much power I have available. So therefore, if system 1 can do more of these things, and I only can teach system 1 something like this, if I do it again and again in a very similar fashion. So the reason I do currently 3 times resistance training, which is mostly identical, is because it would otherwise be way too complicated to organize this resistance training and to decide on a second-to-second basis what exercises and how many reps and so on. So I usually try to hit 10 reps. I always do 3 sets of something, apart from a few exceptions. And so if something like Garmin or some other functionality or an integration of these could basically allow me to outsource the organization of this, then I could basically accept or benefit from the optimizations that would come with something like this, which I currently cannot opt into because I am too constrained with system 2 thinking, and therefore I have to have system 1 set up, which only works with habits basically, which I kind of try to teach whereby with them I try to teach my system 1 basically how my workout ideally is structured, and then it takes over more and more of this. And so this seems to be kind of what would be useful. And so I was wondering, as of this morning, as I did the first of many, not the first of many, but after quite some time now, the first suggested workout by Garmin, basically what this means for me.